Ever wanted to drop a character into your game who's got divine connections, a banquet invitation to Olympus, and a resume that includes Grand Theft Ambrosia and serving his kid for dinner? Meet Tantalus, king, blasphemer, and the original MVP turned what the actual fudge is going on. Hello, all you wonderfully funky world builders, Funky Monkey here, and welcome to today's Feast of Myth and Misfortune. Before we dive in, I expect you noticed my voice. I'm having a awful cold, so please excuse this, but I'll try to make it fun. Before we dive in, I want to warn you. This video includes some dark things like unaliving people, a bit of body horror, and a little bit of human flesh consumption. Although this is just a myth, I want you to be comfortable and you're not regretting spending time with me today. So if those things put you off, I understand if you click away soonish. But if you stick around, I will try to present things in a softer way as to lessen the impact. And with that, we all love TTRPGs, be it D&D, Pathfinder, Discworld, Daggerheart, or whatever twisted homebrew you're cooking up. And if you're looking to build gods, curses, or cursed gods, you could use the defaults, or you could go mythic. And for that, we once again turn to the ancient Greeks, the Pantheon Paparazzi, whose drama makes even the most chaotic bard look way too tame. Today's tale, Tantalus, the mortal who dined with the gods, broke every rule of hospitality, and gave his descendants a family curse that makes soap operas look really lame. Tantalus, the tormented king of Greek mythology, was a mortal at the table of the gods. Tantalus is one of those names that ring with mythic infamy, etched into the scroll of mortal fools who dared to mess with the gods. But before he became the poster child for divine punishment, he was unusually favored. According to myth, Tantalus was a mortal king granted a rare, almost unthinkable honor. He was invited to dine at the table of Zeus himself, up on Olympus mountain. His daughter, Niobe, even bragged about it in Ovid's Metamorphosis, boasting that her father was the only mortal ever allowed to sit among the gods and share their heavenly banquet. And what did he do with this once-in-a-species opportunity? Well, let's just say it didn't go well. His crimes were so shocking, his betrayal so complete, that the gods didn't just punish him. They made him a warning carved into myth for eternity. His name lives on in the very word tantalize, a reference to the cruel fate that followed. So, let's dig in. From his half-divine parentage and royal status, to the unspeakable feast that sealed his doom, to the legendary curse he left behind for his bloodline in the house of Atreus. Tantalus' tale is part tragedy, part horror story, and part cautionary epic. To be frank, the perfect material for your next world-building session. Let's talk about his divine origins and royal lineage. Tantalus wasn't just your run-of-the-mill mortal king. He came with serious divine credentials. Most traditions say he was the son of Zeus himself, born from the nymph Plauto, whose name is closely tied to wealth, a fitting hint of what was to come. His kingdom was set in Lydia, near Mount Olympus, in Asia Minor, where he ruled as a king so rich and powerful that his name became synonymous with prosperity. He married Dione, a daughter of the Titan Atlas and one of the Pleiades, further intertwining his bloodline with that of the divine. Their children were no less legendary. His son, Pelops, would lend his name to the entire Peloponnesus and became the progenitor of the infamous house of Atreus. His daughter Niobe would go down in myth for daring to challenge a goddess and paying dearly for it. Other less known children include Proteas and Dascylus, but Pelops and Niobe are the stars of this family tragedy to come. And yet, for all his mortal roots, Tantalus held a position few ever reached. He was one of the only humans invited to dine at Zeus's table, literally. Seated among gods, he feasted on ambrosia and nectar, perhaps even granted immortality in the process. At that golden table, Tantalus heard divine secrets, shared in celestial conversations, and basked in the glow of Olympus itself. Which makes what comes next all the more shocking. To be raised so high and fall so far. But that's the kind of myth we're working here with. Now let's talk about the crimes of Tantalus, hubris and betrayal. You'd think being a mortal who died at the table of the gods would make someone at least a little humble. I mean, it is a great honor, but you're among gods. Just keep your head a little bit down just in case you screw things up. But no, not Tantalus. Given the rarest of honors, sipping nectar, munching on ambrosia, and hearing the secrets of Olympus, he instead saw it all as an opportunity to misbehave. His list of transgressions reads like a divine rap sheet. First offense, theft. Like that weird uncle that gets invited to a fancy dinner or party or wedding, he started pocketing some of the food. Literally, Tantalus pocketed ambrosia and nectar and snuck it down to earth. He shared the immortality grade snack with his mortal friends like it was nothing, trying to gift what only the gods were meant to have. Mortals weren't supposed to taste eternity. Tantalus not only crossed the line, he blurred the boundaries between man and God, and the Olympians took note. Second, loose lips. Zeus trusted, I don't know why, but apparently he did, trusted Tantalus enough to share divine counsel, plans, prophecies, the kind of stuff you don't spill at brunch unless you had dozen mimosas. But Tantalus, ever the blabbermouth, leaked those secrets to mortals. He betrayed not just Zeus's confidence, but the unspoken rule. If you're lucky enough to sit at the big boy's table, don't run back to your village with a mouth full of spoilers. And the final unforgivable sin, cannibalistic sacrilege. In what can only be described as a psychotic attempt to test divine omniscience, Tantalus invited the gods to a banquet and served them stew made from the butchered body of his own son Pelops. Chopped, cooked, and served like any other roast, Pelops was presented as the main course. The gods, being gods, immediately saw through the deception, except for Demeter, distraught and distracted, who unknowingly took a bite of Pelops' shoulder. Horrified, the gods reassembled the boy, breathing life back into him and replacing the missing shoulder with one made of gleaming ivory. The act was undone, but the audacity remained. Tantalus had murdered his own son to test the gods, and in doing so, broke not only divine law, but every conceivable boundary of fatherhood, hospitality, and frankly, humanity. And it doesn't stop there. Some versions of the myth also accuse Tantalus of accepting a stolen golden dog sacred to Zeus, an artifact taken from the Cretan temple by his friend Pandareus. When Hermes came knocking, Tantalus lied under oath to protect the stolen item. In that version, Zeus didn't just exile him to Tartarus, he flattened him beneath a mountain. In every telling, one thing is clear. Tantalus took the gods' generosity and turned it into arrogance. He stole, betrayed, deceived, and defiled, earning a punishment as eternal as his crimes. Olympus had welcomed him as a guest, and he left as a cautionary tale. The punishment he received? Being tantalized in Tartarus. Basically, for his crimes, cosmic theft, betrayal, and that little incident with the sun stew, Tantalus earned a punishment as legendary as his sins. Zeus cast him down into Tartarus, the shadowy pit reserved for the worst of the worst. And there, in the murk of the underworld, Tantalus became the original icon of eternal frustration. Homer paints the first vivid image of his torment. When Odysseus visits the land of the dead, he sees Tantalus standing in a pool of water, parched with thirst. But every time he leans down to drink, the water vanishes. Above him hangs a canopy of ripe fruit, figs, pomegranates, apples. But whenever he reaches up to grasp one, the branches jerk a little, just out of reach. He is eternally hungry, eternally thirsty, with satisfaction always just a hair's breadth away. From this image, we get the word tantalize, to torment with temptation you can never fulfill. But wait, there's more. Later poets added an extra layer of dread, a massive stone suspended above his head, threatening to fall at any moment. It never drops, but it never stops looming either. A perfect metaphor for anxiety, guilt, and the weight of divine judgment. Pindar describes him wandering under this mighty rock, longing to cast it away but forever trapped beneath its shadow. Euripides adds that the stone hovers in the clouds, forcing Tantalus to live in constant fear as well as famine and thirst. Some writers focus just on the food and water. Others highlight the ever-present boulder. But taken together, they form a symbolic trifecta of torment. Denied relief, denied sustenance, denied peace. A hunger that never ends, a thirst that never quenches, and a fear that never fades. Tantalus wasn't just punished, he became the punishment, a cautionary tale etched into eternity, a reminder to mortals and immortals alike. Betray the gods, and you don't just fall. You fall forever. Now, let's talk about the house of Atreus and the cursed legacy that Tantalus left behind. Tantalus may have been the first to fall, but his story was just the prologue. In true Greek tragedy fashion, his crimes rippled across generations, infecting his bloodline like a divine plague. The family became known as the infamous House of Atreus, a dynasty defined by betrayal, murder, cannibalism, and curses that just refused to go away. After the gods restored young Pelops to life, he spent time with Poseidon, sometimes as the sea god's favorite charioteer, before returning to the mortal world. There, Pelops courted Princess Hippodameia, and had to win her hand by defeating her father, King Oenomaus, in a deadly chariot race. Depending on the version you are reading, Pelops either... So, this is manga. Okay, so depending on the version of the story you are reading, Pelops either prayed for divine help or bribed the king's charioteer Martillus to sabotage the race. He won, but then betrayed Martillus to protect his secret by tossing the charioteer into the sea. With his dying breath, Martillus cursed Pelops and his entire line. One curse wasn't enough for this family, so now they had two. Okay. Pelops and Hippodameia had several children, including Atreus and Thyestes, and the next round of bloodshed kicked off really fast. When Thyestes seduced Atreus' wife and challenged him for the throne of Mycenae, Atreus responded with the most infamous dinner party in myth. He murdered Thyestes' sons, chopped them up, and served their flesh to their unsuspecting father at the banquet. Man, these people really had a thing for this kind of crap. Once the meal was done, Atreus revealed the grisly truth, displaying the severed heads and hands of the children as the final course. Even the sun, it said, refused to shine at the horror. Thyestes, broken and exiled, sought vengeance. An oracle told him the only way to destroy Atreus was to father a son with his own daughter. Greeks. That son Aegisthus would later murder Atreus and continue the cycle of vengeance. Meanwhile, Atreus' sons, and I'm sure you are familiar with these names, Agamemnon and Menelaus, took center stage in the saga of the Trojan War. But even they couldn't escape the curse. Agamemnon was murdered by his wife Clytemnestra and Aegisthus upon returning home from Troy, and his son Orestes was fated to carry out bloody revenge. Of course. Greek authors of tragedies like Aeschylus and Euripides turned this tangled web into an entire genre. Tragedies. And the curse wasn't limited to Pelops' sons. His daughter Niobe, proud of her divine lineage and large family, dared to boast that she was superior to the goddess Leto. In response, Apollo and Artemis struck down all of Niobe's children in a single day. Her husband, Amphion, died in grief, and Niobe fled to Mount Sipylus, where she was turned into stone, forever weeping, with rainwater running down her rocky face like endless tears. From Tantalus' hubris to Pelops' betrayal, from Atreus' cannibalistic tendencies during the feast to Niobe's pride, this was a family that couldn't just stop offending the divine. The Tantalids weren't just cursed, they embodied the curse. Every generation inherited the original sin, and every tragedy echoed the first one. In Aeschylus' Agamemnon, the chorus calls it plainly: a house drenched in blood, haunted by ancient wrongdoings that still cry out for vengeance. Of course, like in the case of almost all Greek myths, there are also alternate versions to the story. While the broad strokes of Tantalus' myth, divine favor, horrific crime, eternal torment, remain constant, not every ancient author agreed on the details. Some found the story too grotesque, too scandalous, even for the gods. The lyric poet Pindar, writing in the 5th century BCE, outright rejects the most infamous part, that the Olympians were tricked into cannibalism. In his Olympian Ode number 1, Pindar calls the tale slander, malicious rumor, spread by jealous mortals when Pelops disappeared. He insisted no blessed god could ever be duped into devouring human flesh. He says, "For me it is impossible to call one of the blessed gods a glutton. I stand back from it." Instead, he offers a cleaner version. Tantalus hosted the gods in Sipylus, and Poseidon, smitten with young Pelops, whisked him off to Olympus to serve as his cupbearer, much like Ganymede. With Pelops gone, people invented the tale of murder and stew. In Pindar's telling, Tantalus' real sin was stealing ambrosia and nectar. Divine overindulgence, not filicide. For that, Zeus punished him with a dangling stone and returned Pelops to Earth. It's a softer take, with no dismembered children, no shoulder of ivory, just hubris, theft, and divine boundaries crossed. Pindar's version didn't overtake the grisly classic though, but it shows that even in antiquity some preferred their myths without the gore. Other authors colored the tale with their own interpretations. For example, Euripides in Orestes emphasizes Tantalus' failure to keep divine secrets. His downfall wasn't cannibalism, but a loose tongue. Pausanias, ever the travel guide, mentions a tomb of Tantalus near Mount Sipylus, echoing a rare version where Zeus crushed him under the mountain itself. The Romans, on the other hand, loved a good metaphor, so Tantalus became the symbol of unfulfilled desire. Ovid, Horace, and Cicero all name-drop him when reflecting on greed, temptation, and the torment of wanting what you can't reach. As all, I think most, I don't know if all, but as most Greek myths, there are also alternate versions to this classical myth. While the broad strokes of Tantalus' myth, divine favor, horrific crime, eternal torment, remain constant, not every ancient author agreed on the details. Some found the story a little too grotesque, too scandalous, even for the gods. The lyric poet Pindar, writing in the 5th century BCE, outright rejects the most infamous part, that the Olympians were tricked into cannibalism. In his Olympian Ode, Pindar calls the tale slander, malicious rumor, he says, spread by jealous mortals when Pelops disappeared. He insisted no blessed god could ever be duped into devouring human flesh. He says, "For me it is impossible to call one of the blessed gods a glutton. I stand back from it." End quote. Instead, he offers a cleaner version. Tantalus hosted the gods in Sipylus, and Poseidon, smitten with young Pelops, whisked him off to Olympus to serve as his cupbearer, much like Ganymede. With Pelops gone, people invented a tale of murder and stew. In Pindar's telling, Tantalus's real sin was stealing ambrosia and nectar, divine overindulgence, not filicide. For that, Zeus punished him with the dangling stone and returned Pelops to earth. It's a softer take. No dismembered children, no shoulder of ivory, just hubris, theft, and divine boundaries crossed. Pindar's version didn't overtake the grisly classic, but it showed that even in antiquity, some preferred their myths without the gore. Other authors colored the tale with their own interpretation. Euripides, for example, in Orestes, emphasizes Tantalus's failure to keep divine secrets. His downfall wasn't cannibalism, but a loose tongue. Pausanias, ever the travel guide, mentions a tomb of Tantalus near Mount Sipylus, echoing a rare version where Zeus crushed him with the mountain itself. On the other hand, Romans really loved a good metaphor, so Tantalus became the symbol of unfulfilled desire. Ovid, Horace, and Cicero all name-dropped him when reflecting on greed, temptation, and the torment of wanting what you can't reach. For storytellers and world builders such as us, these alternate versions open doors. Do you want a madman who wants to test the gods by serving up his own son? You can go full horror. Prefer a sly mortal who just stole from the divine buffet and couldn't keep a secret? There's a version for that too. Whichever path you take, the core warning remains. Great privilege demands great restraint, and hubris, especially at the god's table, always brings a fall. Tantalus, whether a butcher or a blabbermouth, crossed a line no mortal should. Let's conclude this story. Tantalus's tale is one of extremes. Divine privilege followed by monstrous folly. Favor turned to eternal punishment. From sipping ambrosia with the gods to choking on thirst in Tartarus, his arc stretches from Olympus's golden banquet to the shadowy depths of mythic damnation. And for TTRPGs, this is pure narrative gold. Drop him into your world as a tormented monarch, a fallen hero cursed by the gods, or the grim ancestor of a noble line that just can't escape its blood-soaked fate and just accumulates curses. Whether you need a cursed artifact, I'm sure they got it. A spectral NPC offering a cryptic warning, sure. Or a mythic trial involving a meal no one should eat? Tantalus delivers. The imagery alone is hauntingly gameable. A king wading through water he can't drink, reaching for fruit he cannot taste, haunted by a boulder that never falls. That's world building with bite. And what makes it even more compelling is that this isn't a story dreamed up by modern hands. It comes to us straight from the ancients, the OGs. Homer places Tantalus in the underworld with terrifying clarity. Pindar defends the god's dignity by revising the tale. Euripides' characters still suffer beneath the long shadow of Tantalus' name. These aren't just old stories, they're warnings wrapped in poetry, questions of hubris, divine justice, and what happens when a mortal crosses too many lines. So take this myth, reshape it, and run with it. Whether you stick to the grotesque original or lean into the more nuanced version, the lesson remains the same. Those who steal from the gods, or worse, test their wisdom with a stew of sins, may find themselves trapped in a cycle of want and regret. Just ask Tantalus. He's still reaching, still thirsting, still waiting. And with that, if this myth-drenched descent into divine dinner disasters gave you chills and or ideas, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join this growing funky community. Toss a like my way and ring that bell like you're summoning the Furies. Leave a comment down below and tell me if you've ever used such a character in your world building. Or if you don't have anything to say, just say hi. I always love hearing from you. Thank you for the gift of your time. Until next time, stay curious, stay funky. Don't feed the gods anything suspicious, and remember, in world building and in myth, curses make excellent plot hooks. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful, funky day. Cheers.